In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true disturbing stories about the Appalachian Mountains. This one will make you think twice before planning your next mountain trip. But before we begin, please consider subscribing. And don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Let me know where you're watching from. Thank you all. Now let's start. I'd done my research, spent half the night scrolling through glowing reviews. Everyone's saying the same thing. Peaceful, safe, perfect day trip. Honestly, that's what I needed. Something to quiet. Simple. My head had been a mess lately. Work stress, barely sleeping, just noise in every direction. I figured a few hours in the mountains might shut it all off for a bit. So Friday morning, I grabbed a water bottle, a bag of beef jerky, and tossed on my old hiking boots. Charged my phone to 100%. Downloaded the trail map offline just in case. My mom always nags me about preparedness. If she could have seen me packing, she'd have been proud. I started a little before noon. The sun was sitting high behind these thin clouds, bright enough that everything had that weird white glare. The trailhead looked harmless, just a dusty ribbon disappearing into the trees. A wooden sign with the trail name and this happy little arrow pointing forward like it was saying, "You got this. First mile, easy." Gravel crunching under my boots, cicadas buzzing like background static. I passed one guy heading back toward the lot. Maybe mid-60s, wiry frame, long gray beard. His face was red like he'd baked in the sun too long. He nodded as we crossed, but his eyes didn't meet mine. They flicked past me like something behind me had caught his attention, and he was mumbling, lips moving fast like a prayer under his breath. I almost asked him how far to the overlook, but by the time I turned, he was gone. Just gone, swallowed by the curve of the trail. After that, it was just me. The second mile dragged. The path thinned out, twisting through clusters of trees that leaned in like they wanted to keep secrets. Roots snaked across the dirt like veins, and I kept tripping just enough to feel stupid. The cicadas stopped, too. Dead silence. I didn't notice at first. My brain was chewing on a dozen things. But when I finally did, it felt like someone had cut the sound out of the world. That's when the little things started stacking up. The trail markers? Gone. They painted bright orange blazes on the trees every 100 feet or so, but at some point they just stopped. At first I figured I'd missed one, so I slowed down, scanned both sides, even doubled back a bit. Nothing. Pulled out my phone. GPS dot said I was fine, still on the trail, so I shrugged it off. Kept going, but the ground changed, flatter, softer, like a sponge. It hadn't rained in days, so why did every step make this quiet sucking sound? The trees looked different too. Bark darker, almost black in spots. Branches thin and brittle, like the forest was sick. And then I heard it. Footsteps. At first I thought, cool, someone else is out here. The steps were soft, steady, but when I stopped, they stopped. Perfect silence. And when I held my breath, the silence felt heavier somehow, like something was listening. I turned slowly. The trail behind me was empty, just dirt vanishing into the green. Hello? My voice sounded small, swallowed by the trees. Nothing. I let out this awkward little laugh, like, good one, brain. Spook yourself for fun. But when I started walking again, so did the steps. Same pace. Close enough I could feel it in my bones. I didn't look back. Didn't run either. Every nerve in my body was screaming to, but something in my head whispered, if you run, you're done. By the time I saw the cabin, the air felt heavy, thick enough that breathing felt like work. The thing is, it shouldn't have been there. I'd studied the map. This was protected land. No structures, no private property for miles. But there it was, hunched in a clearing like it had been waiting for someone to find it. Roof sagging in the middle, shingles peeling up like curled leaves. Front door hanging on one hinge, the wood swollen and split. No glass in the windows, just two black squares staring out like eye sockets. I froze at the tree line. My pulse was hammering so loud it felt like it was in my teeth. I told myself it was shelter, just a place to sit down, drink water, figure out where I'd screwed up. So I went in. The floor groaned under my boots. Boards soft with rot, and every step sent this faint shiver up my legs, like the house didn't want me there. Then the smell hit. Sweet, metallic, and rotten all at once, like something left too long in the heat. I swung my flashlight across the walls. At first, I thought they were covered in claw marks. Then I realized they were letters, names, hundreds of them, carved deep into the wood. Some had dates. The oldest one I saw was from 1937. The newest? My chest locked up, the newest said, challenging 2025. I stumbled back so hard I slammed into the doorframe. My light jittered across the floor, and in that split second, I swear something moved in the far corner. A shadow curling back into itself like smoke. Then the footsteps started again, closer now. Slow, careful, coming through the doorway behind me. I didn't look, couldn't. I ran, branches clawed at my arms, roots grabbed for my boots. My lungs burned, legs screaming. But I didn't stop. Not until the green cracked open into gray and I saw the glint of metal. My car, sitting in the empty lot like nothing happened. I ripped the door open, threw myself inside, slammed the locks down. My hands shook so bad I nearly dropped the keys. When the engine roared, my phone lit up on the seat beside me. A notification slid across the screen. Welcome to Jalen Ridge Trail. Estimated hike time, 4 hours. My reflection in the glass didn't look right. I didn't wait to figure out why. I drove until the mountains were gone in the rear view, and I'm never going back. My shift at the ranger station started at 6 that morning. I'd been doing seasonal work for years. Trail clearing, guiding groups, checking old structures. Nothing fancy. Just enough to keep me outside and away from fluorescent lights and office drama. Back then, that was all I cared about. That day, the assignment sounded simple. Hike an old trail that had been shut down for decades and check the condition of a fire tower before they decided if it was worth tearing down. About 8 miles in. If I kept a good pace, I'd be back before dark, no big deal. The route didn't even show up on most maps anymore. A rock slide wiped part of it out years ago, and they rerouted hikers. The only reason I knew about it was because I'd seen it on old topo sheets and in ranger logs from the 70s. I'd been curious for a while, so when the job came up, I was weirdly excited. Finally something different. By mid-morning, I'd coaled into a gravel turnout, cut the engine, and just sat for a second. No cars, no noise, just trees in every direction. I slung my pack over one shoulder, boots crunching on gravel, and started walking. The first couple of miles were easy. A faint trail through dense woods, leaves packed thick on the ground. The kind of path that makes you feel like you're the first person to set foot there in years. Everything was still. Not dead, just still. About 2 miles in, I noticed a side trail cutting left. Not a faint one either. A sharp, clean track like something had been through recently. That stopped me cold. This route was supposed to be abandoned. My first thought was, poachers. Wouldn't be the first time. I checked my notes. Nothing about a spur trail. Pulled my radio, keyed up. Base, you copy? Static. I tried again. Nothing. Not even the usual hiss. Dead quiet. That bothered me. Radios don't usually go completely silent, even in valleys. I tapped the casing, turned the volume knob. Nothing. That's when I should have turned around. But I told myself maybe it was a dead zone, and I'd only be gone a couple more hours. I had water, gear, daylight. No big deal. So I kept going. The trail tightened the farther I hiked, the trees pressing in like they wanted a closer look. By mile 6, the moss on rocks had been scraped off in long streaks, high up, chest level. I told myself it could have been a bear brushing past. Could have. I reached the clearing around noon. The tower stood there, leaning like it had one too many drinks. Half the wood was gray and splintered, bolts the color of dried blood. But the tower wasn't the problem. The footprints were bare human prints, circling the base in spirals, like whoever made them had walked around and around for hours. The toes dug deep, almost clawing at the dirt. I called out. My voice sounded way too small in that clearing. Nothing answered. I climbed the first steps, and the wood let out this deep, aching groan under me. Halfway up, I saw it carved into the railing. Day out after dark. The letters were hacked deep, rough, like someone didn't care how it looked. Fresh splinters curled at the edges. I took a photo with my phone. Of course, no signal. From the top platform, the forest stretched out forever. Nothing but trees in every direction. No roads, no rooftops. Not even a glimpse of the trail I came in on. It was like the world stopped at the tree line. I didn't stick around. When I hit the clearing again, I heard a branch crack out in the trees. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I froze. First thought, deer. Second thought, maybe a person. Then something else entirely when the steps just stopped. Like it wanted me to know it could move without a sound if it wanted to. I didn't call out again. I kept a fast pace, head down, counting steps like that would keep my brain from coming apart. 100, 200, 300. The big boulder at mile 6 was gone. The one I stepped around earlier, gone. I told myself I remembered wrong. Then I hit the creek, half a mile too soon. The land didn't feel the same anymore. By mile 4, the main trail was gone behind me. In its place, the side trail. The same one from earlier, only now it was in front of me. And behind me, nothing but a green wall of trees. The woods went silent. No wind, no birds, no bugs. Like everything just held its breath. I turned in a slow circle, heart hammering hard enough to blur my vision. That's when I saw the carvings on the trees. Stay out after dark. Over and over, gouged deep. Some letters smeared with something that wasn't sap. The light started dying. Shadows stretched across the path, long and sharp. I didn't have a choice. I followed the only trail left. The incline burned my legs. Switchback after switchback, each one tighter than the last. Trees pressing close like ribs in a cage. By the time I hit the top, the light was almost gone. The trail ended in a clearing. No tower this time. Just a ring of blackened stones and a heap in the center. Clothes. Torn, filthy, stiff, with something dark. I stumbled back so fast I tripped over a root. That's when I heard it. A voice. Low, broken. Words I didn't know. Close enough that I could hear the breath behind it. I ran. Didn't care where. Branches whipped my arms, thorns tore at my sleeves. The voice followed. Low at first, then rising into something like a laughter, except wrong. Like it was unraveling. I don't know how long I ran before gravel crunched under my boots and the trees fell away. My truck was sitting there like a lifeboat in black water. I dove in, locked the doors, started the engine. Didn't stop until I saw the ranger station lights. I told them everything. The trail, the carvings, the clearing. They pulled an old map, traced the route with a finger, then looked at me like I'd just confessed to a murder. That section burned in '78, one of them said. Tower came down with it. There's nothing out there. I was 31 when it happened. I'd been hiking different sections of the Appalachian Trail for a few years, usually over long weekends. Nothing major. It was kind of my thing when I needed to unplug. That summer, though, I wanted something bigger. Not a through hike or anything ambitious, just a solid 3-day solo stretch through the Blue Ridge. I'd done 2 shorter solo trips before, so I figured I had this down. Packed light, left my route with a friend, and hit the trail by noon. Day 1 was perfect. Exactly what I expected. Quiet, calm, nothing weird. I passed 2 southbound hikers, exchanged quick hellos. Later, I saw some guy crouched by a stream filling his bottle, and that was it. For hours, it was just me and the trail. By the time I'd put enough miles behind me, I stepped off into the trees and set up camp. I used a tarp instead of a tent. Less weight, easier to pack up. Cooked my food about 50 yards away. Hung the bag like you're supposed to, and was out before it even got fully dark. Day 2 started just as normal. Made breakfast, packed up, hit the trail early. It was all fine for a while, then something started to bug me. Not like I was in danger, more like my brain was glitching. It's hard to explain, but it felt like when you walk into a room and immediately forget why you went in. The trail looked fine, nothing out of place, but something didn't line up. I kept checking my map. If I was right, I had about 2 miles to the next landmark. Easy. But after what felt like an hour, probably more, I checked again and I'd barely covered half a mile. My watch said I was moving at a normal pace, but the distance didn't feel right. It was like the trail was stretching when I wasn't looking. I told myself I was tired, had a snack, drank water. Didn't help. By late afternoon, I started looking for a campsite. That part of the trail was rocky, so it took longer than I liked to find level ground. When I finally pitched the tarp, I checked my watch and froze. It was later than it should have been. Way later. I even checked it twice, like maybe I'd read it wrong. Nope. Somehow the day had just evaporated. That night, I woke up once. No noise, no animals, nothing. Just awake, like someone had tapped me on the shoulder. Checked my watch. 2:13 a.m. My chest felt tight. I told myself it was nerves, maybe too much coffee earlier, and forced myself back to sleep. Day 3 is when everything snapped. I got moving early, determined to make up time. My plan was to blow past the next shelter and shave some mileage off the last day. The morning felt heavy. The air, the light, everything seemed dim, longer than it should have, even after the sun came up. I tried to ignore it and kept moving. Then the trail didn't make sense anymore. First, I hit a fork I didn't remember. There shouldn't have been one. I stood there for a long time, map in hand, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. One tree had a blaze, but it was faded, like nobody had touched it in years. The other path? Nothing at all. The AT doesn't look like that. It's one of the most maintained trails in the country. Blazes are fresh, clear, impossible to miss. That faded one felt wrong. I decided to backtrack about half a mile to a junction I knew was real and take the other route. An hour later, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A downed bird across the trail. I'd passed it that morning. Same split in the bark, same roots twisted like a claw. At first I thought maybe I'd turned myself around without noticing. Then I saw the fire ring. Just stones and gray ash with a half-burned log resting on the edge. I'd seen that too. Same size, same spot. Not similar, the same. I was walking in a loop. I checked my compass. North was still north, which should have taken me toward the shelter. So I kept going. 2 hours later, I was back at the fire ring. That's when I stopped. I know enough survival stories to know wandering gets you killed. So I set up camp again, rationed water, and told myself I'd hike back at first light, even if it meant retracing everything. I didn't sleep, not because of sounds, because there weren't any. The woods never go completely quiet. There's always wind or some night bird or distant rustling. But that night, dead still. Once or twice, I thought I heard something faint, like pressure on pine needles. But it never came closer. Morning came like a curtain lifting. Pale light, no real warmth. I packed fast and headed south, the way I'd come. After an hour, I hit that same fork with the faded blaze. I hadn't turned wrong. I hadn't drifted. I was back. That's when something broke in me. I dropped my pack and ran. South, east, I didn't care. Just ran. Branches tore at my arms, lungs burning. I kept expecting to see a road, a shelter, anything human. After maybe 20 minutes, I burst into a clearing, out of meadow. A clearing someone made. Trees cut in a rough square, stumps gray and splintered. In the center was a wooden frame waist high, like a butcher's table stripped to bones. And on top was a deer skull with fresh velvet antlers still attached. It wasn't bleached, it was slick, dark, like it hadn't been dead long. And tied to the antlers with twine were strips of fabric, some bright, some faded, torn from my clothes. I didn't stop, didn't touch it, just kept moving until my legs gave out. When I finally dropped, I checked my compass. The needle was spinning, not wobbling, spinning hard like a fan blade. I ditched it and started toward the lowest ground I could find. Hours later, I heard water. A thin trickle at first, then a stream. I followed it. No trail, no blazes, nothing but water and trees. By dusk, my mouth was dry, legs shaking. Then I saw something metallic through the trees. A car. Rusted to hell, roots pulling it under. I collapsed next to it because it meant people had been here once. A couple my mom knew from church asked me to house sit their cabin for Easter weekend. They were older, the kind of people who always smell like fresh laundry and carry gum in their pockets. Really nice folks. They owned this huge place out in the Appalachians, about 2 hours from town. When they first said cabin, I pictured something small and cozy, a single story with a porch swing, maybe a chimney puffing smoke like a postcard. This was nothing like that. The place was massive. 3 full levels of heavy timber and stacked stone built into the side of the ridge like someone wanted to own the mountain. Inside, the floors creaked with that solid weight you only get from old wood, and the hallways didn't make sense. They twisted around, doubled back, and connected rooms in ways that made me feel like I'd forget which direction was north. And the windows, God, the windows. Every wall was glass, big perfect panes that framed the mountains like pictures. During the day, it was stunning. I stood there for a while, just staring at the ridges, rolling out like waves. But at night, whole different story. When the sun dropped, those windows turned black. You couldn't see a thing out there. It was like living inside a giant mirror, your reflection everywhere. But if something or someone was outside looking in, they'd see everything. That thought kept scratching at the back of my mind, even before anything weird happened. The couple didn't have kids, just 2 dogs. Samson, this giant shepherd mix who moved about as fast as a parked truck, and Sadie, a rescue husky with enough anxiety to power a city. They warned me about her before I even said yes. She gets destructive. They told me. Doors, chairs, even car seats. She once chewed straight through a door frame because they walked to the mailbox. So my main job was to keep her calm and make sure neither dog starved to death. Easy enough. They'd pay me well for a weekend of hanging out in the mountains. The first night was great. I got there before dark, hauled my bag upstairs to the guest room and made pasta on their huge gas stove. The kind that looks like it belongs on a cooking show. After dinner, I turned on the gas fireplace in the main room. The flames hissed to life and the logs inside started glowing orange. Both dogs stretched out by my feet like they'd claimed me. No TV. The Wi-Fi barely worked and I had no cell signal inside. The only way to get a bar was to hike to the old shed at the far end of the gravel drive. Even then, it came and went like a moody teenager. The quiet didn't bother me at first. The fire cracked now and then. The dogs snored. It felt like one of those weekends you're supposed to post on Instagram with a caption like, digital detox. But when I finally lay down in bed, I noticed how deep that silence really was. No cars, no far-off dogs barking, no hum of a highway in the distance. Just this thick, absolute stillness that made my own breathing sound loud. It felt like the hills had swallowed the world and left me in the pit. The second night started fine. I spent most of the day hiking toward a creek that ran through the hollow. The cold seeped through my jeans, and by the time I got back, I smelled like wet leaves and mud. I ate leftovers and decided to kill time in their basement gym. It was basically a workout room with a treadmill, some weights, and a TV mounted in the corner. One whole wall was glass, looking out over a deck and the woods beyond. Even during the day, that view made me uneasy. The trees stood so close together that after the first few rows, everything turned into a blur of shadow and undergrowth, like a wall of green-black that swallowed whatever tried to pass through. By the time I changed and went downstairs, the sky outside had already dimmed to that bluish gray. I switched the TV on low, climbed onto the treadmill, and started running. About 10 minutes in, it happened. A sharp chime, just one. It cut through the noise of the TV and the hum of the treadmill like someone had stuck a pin in the air. I froze. My hands gripped the treadmill rail so tight my knuckles hurt. I knew that sound. The couple had explained it when I first walked in. The alarm. Every time a door opened, the system gave that little beep. I yanked my earbuds out and stood there, chest pounding. The basement was dead quiet, except for the faint flicker of the TV in the corner. Then I saw it, and a glass door, wide open, not cracked, not unlocked. Wide open. The night air sliding in across the floor, cold and sharp against my skin. I stared at it like my brain needed a full minute to believe what my eyes were seeing. Beyond the door, the woods were black. Not dark, black. Like someone had drained the color out of the world. My reflection hung in the glass like a ghost, but past that there was nothing. No shapes, no movement, just a sheet of emptiness. Behind me, the dogs were calm. Samson hadn't even lifted his head. Sadie was on her side, legs twitching in some dream. If a stranger had come in, those two would have lost their minds. I swallowed hard and forced myself to move. The air pouring in felt heavier the closer I got. My fingers fumbled on the lock like they didn't want to work. I slammed the door shut and twisted the latch until it clicked. For a second, I just stood there, hands pressed to the glass, my own breath fogging it up. I thought about calling my dad, but what would I even say? Hey, a door opened? Maybe I forgot to lock it earlier. Maybe it didn't latch. Except, I knew I hadn't touched that door. Not once. I killed the treadmill and bolted upstairs. Did a full sweep of the cabin. Every door, every window, upstairs and down. Everything was locked. Everything looked fine. Still, that feeling lingered, like something was out there in the dark, waiting for the lights to die. I shut myself in the guest room, locked the flimsy brass knob. It wouldn't stop a kick, but it gave me the illusion of safety. I showered fast, left the lamp on, and crawled into bed with my phone in my hand. No service, just the gray circles spinning. I don't know when I fell asleep. What woke me was the sound, a low growl, then another. Both dogs were on the floor, hackles raised, teeth flashing in the lamplight. Not barking, just growling. Slow, deep, relentless. And then, faint but clear, I heard the chime, that same soft beep. Somewhere in the house. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like I'd swallowed ice. I slid out of bed and jammed my boots on, hand shaking so bad I couldn't tie the laces. I grabbed the chair from the corner and shoved it under the knob. Not that it would stop anyone who really wanted in. The window was my only option. I cranked it open, shoved the screen out, and the dogs went first. They leapt into the dark like bullets, landing with soft thuds. I swung a leg over, slipped, and hit the ground hard. My knees stung. My breath tore out of me like fabric ripping. We ran across the yard, through the gravel, up the drive toward the old shed, where the trees finally thinned enough for a bar or two of signal. My boots hammered the dirt. The dogs bounded ahead, their shapes stretching and snapping in the dark. The woods didn't make a sound. No wind, no crickets, nothing but my pulse hammering in my ears. When one shaky bar flickered onto my phone screen, I called my dad. He answered on the first ring. I don't remember what I said, just him cutting in, calm but sharp, telling me to stay put. 40 minutes later, headlights swept through the trees. My knees nearly buckled when I saw them. We went back together, his rifle in his hands, both dogs pressed to my legs like they'd glue themselves there if they could. The house was lit up like a lantern. My dad cleared every room while I stood outside hugging myself. Nothing was taken, nothing broken, but when the cops came and checked the basement, the glass door was open again. Just an inch this time, like someone tried to close it but didn't bother finishing. The lock was scratched. One of the deputies muttered something and pulled my dad aside, but I caught enough. The couple had gotten threats over a land deal. Some locals were angry about leases and drilling rights. They'd told the sheriff weeks ago. They didn't tell me. I packed before sunrise, left the key on the counter without looking back. My shift at the trail station started at 6 sharp. Back then, that job felt like the best thing I had going. It was quiet, predictable, and tucked so far into the mountains it was easy to forget anything else existed. Most people I knew thought I was crazy for taking it. Too isolated, too boring, too far from anything. For me, that was exactly the point. No traffic, no neighbors dropping by uninvited, no noise except what belonged out there. I liked the clean break from everything. The routine was simple enough. Unlock the cabin, check the weather instruments and make sure nothing froze or cracked. Then log the data into this old terminal that wheezed like it had emphysema every time I typed. If hikers wandered through late, I'd sign them in, point them toward a safe camp zone, and make sure they didn't do anything dumb. Otherwise, the night belonged to me. Just me, that terminal, and silence thick enough to hear your own heartbeat if you listened hard. The kind of silence that can feel peaceful. Or not. Around 9, the station radio crackled to life. A man's voice, steady but faint, like he was calling from another ridge entirely. Lost trail, New Shale Ridge. 2 of us. We'll stay put till first light. I didn't panic. That sort of thing happens more than you'd think. People underestimate these mountains all the time. They look friendly from the highway, but once you're in them, trails twist in on themselves. Forks pop up where the map swears there shouldn't be one, and fog can roll in so fast you'd swear someone dropped a curtain over the world. Makes landmarks disappear. Makes you wonder if you're even facing the same direction as before. I logged their call, gave the standard advice. Don't move, conserve your battery, we'll send someone in the morning, and signed off. I didn't even think about it twice. At that point, it was just another routine call in a job full of them. After midnight, I stepped outside for a smoke. That's when everything started to feel off. The road behind the station hooks north toward an old service shed that nobody uses anymore. It's still marked on the map as an emergency point, but in reality, it's a wreck. Roof leaks, windows on, floor probably rotting out from underneath. The kind of place you'd only go if you had no other option. I could see the outline of the road in the moonlight, pale and narrow against the dark tree line. And that's when I saw 2 lights. At first I thought headlamps, maybe some late hikers cutting through, but they didn't move like headlamps. No sway, no bob, just 2 steady points of light, perfectly parallel, gliding forward like they were mounted on something sliding down the road in a dead straight line. It waited for the sound of an engine. Nothing, not even the crunch of tires. Just silence and those 2 lights drifting closer. Then, gone. Both winked out at the exact same time. Like someone flipped a switch. I stood there for a while, staring down the empty road, trying to logic it out. Probably headlights from a truck and a lower switchback, I told myself. Except there is no lower switchback on that side, not even a fire road. Just steep drop-offs and trees thick enough to break bones if you fall wrong. I went back inside. Logged what I saw because protocol says you log everything, even the weird stuff. Then I sat there at the desk, looking at that terminal like it might explain something if I stared long enough. It didn't. The feeling stuck. The sense that what I'd seen wasn't random. Around 2, the radio snapped on again. No call sign this time, just a voice. close enough that every hair on my arm stood up. We're at the shed. Then static swallowed the rest. I grabbed the mic. Identify yourself. Another burst. We're inside now. Nothing on the screen, no ID, just blank. I sat there holding the mic, staring at the door like I expected it to move. Could it be the couple from Shale Ridge? It didn't add up. From where they said they were, it would have taken hours to reach the shed, if they even knew it existed. Confirm your party size, I said, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Static, nothing else. By 3, I couldn't take it anymore. Sitting there, waiting, hoping it was nothing, I couldn't do it. If they were out there and hurt and I ignored it, that would stick. So I grabbed the lantern, a first aid kit, and signed myself out in the log with one note. Checking service, shed back soon. The trail started easy, loose shale crunching under my boots loud in the stillness. I kept telling myself it was just a walk, just another task, nothing out of the ordinary. But a mile in, the trees closed around me, and the quiet changed. No wind, no night bugs, not even the distant crack of branches from deer. Just me, my breath, and the steady drag of boots through dirt. About halfway there, I saw the prints, small, barefoot, toes splayed like whoever made them was running hard. The soil was damp enough to hold a perfect impression, and each print was deep, too deep. Like whoever left them weighed more than they should have. I kept going, because what else was I supposed to do? Every few steps, I swung the lantern back just to make sure the trail behind me was still empty. It always was. When the shed finally came into view, something in my stomach went cold. The door was hanging by one hinge, like someone had ripped it loose. I swept the lantern across the interior, and for half a second, I saw a figure. Tall, still, facing the wall. Station here, I called, trying to keep my voice steady. If you need help, sit down, let me check you out. The figure didn't move. I stepped closer. It wasn't a person, just a coat. Nailed to the boards at shoulder height so it hung like a body. The nails were fresh, the wood around them still raw and splintered. Then something dripped behind me. I spun around, lantern swinging wide, catching shadows on the dirt floor. Nothing. Just footprints circling the shed, over and over, like someone had walked in loops until the ground chewed itself into a trench. Whoever made them never went inside. They just kept going around and around. That's when my radio hissed. Not static this time. A whisper so close it felt like it came from inside my own head. Go back inside. Now, I didn't think. I just ran. Lantern swinging wild, throwing broken shards of light into the trees. The trail felt twice as long going back. Branches cracked behind me. Soft at first, then sharper, like something matching my pace, but staying just out of sight. When the station lights finally broke through the dark, I nearly slammed into the door. Bolted it, dropped the lantern hard enough to make the glass ring. I called the rangers with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. They said they'd send someone at dawn. I'm 29 years old, and last October I signed up for a job running survey lines through a section of forest out in the Appalachian Ridge. The assignment sounded simple enough. Hike the boundary, flag markers along the proposed property line, log the coordinates for the company, move on. I've done plenty of jobs like that before, but never this far out. This place was remote, like 30 miles from the nearest paved road. Remote, maybe more. And when I got there, the access trail looked like no one had set foot on it in years. Not overgrown enough to disappear completely, but enough that every step felt like it belonged to the first person to walk there in a decade. They gave me the usual kit: GPS unit, extra batteries, a satellite phone for check-ins. My supervisor said reception out here was garbage and told me to report back every night without fail. He really emphasized that. Said it twice. I remember thinking he sounded more nervous than I was. Honestly, that didn't bother me. I like quiet. I like being out where you can hear your own heartbeat if you stop moving. Places like that clear my head. Or at least, they used to. Day one was smooth. I followed the ridge east, flagged maybe a dozen points, logged everything like clockwork, and set up camp in a shallow hollow. By the time I zipped the tent shut, the sun was gone. Out here, when it drops, it doesn't fade. It just vanishes behind the ridge, and suddenly you're in it. Black tree shapes in every direction, a wall of dark. But that didn't feel strange. I've spent nights in worse places. The second day, I got up early and started pushing toward the next section. The GPS had me climbing this nasty ridge, nothing but dead fallen loose rock. I was an hour in when the unit pinged an alert. Approaching log point. That stopped me cold. Logged point? There shouldn't have been any. The company told me this track was untouched. Blank slate. I figured maybe it was some old data in the unit or a glitch. I didn't even break stride. Then I saw it. A wooden stake driven into the ground. Red tape tied around it, weathered and fraying at the ends. And hanging from that tape, a little tag. My initials, written on it in black marker. I just stood there, staring at it, long enough for the wind to rattle the tape like it was laughing at me. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Someone else worked this section before me, and they reused some of my old tags. That made sense, except it didn't. Because I'd never been here before, this ridge was wrong. The terrain, the angles of the slopes, I would have remembered if I'd seen it before. And the handwriting on that tag, it wasn't just similar to mine. It was exactly mine. Same tilt to the letters, same little sharp hook on the R, the kind of detail you notice because you've written your own name thousands of times. I left it where it was and kept moving, trying to pretend the knot forming in my gut didn't exist. An hour later, I found another one. Same stake, same tape, same tag, same impossible handwriting. That's when I started scanning the ground for footprints. Anything. The soil was soft enough in some places that it should have shown a track if anyone had passed through with a bundle of stakes. But there was nothing. Just deer prints, squirrel digs, normal forest noise. By the time I set up camp that night, my head was buzzing with questions I didn't have answers for. I zipped the tent, sat down, and checked my gear like a maniac. My roll of tape, still in the side pouch. My stack of tags, untouched. GPS glowing faintly near my sleeping bag like a green, unblinking eye. I was just starting to calm down when the GPS started beeping. 3 a.m. Its tone dragged me out of a dead sleep. At first I thought it was a low battery warning, but no. The screen said, "Location drift detected." According to the coordinates, I had moved almost 2 miles in my sleep. I hadn't moved an inch. I stared at that blinking cursor so long my eyes burned. Finally, I unzipped the flap and stepped outside. Everything was still. Not silent in a dramatic way, just normal forest quiet. A slice of moon, black line of ridge, nothing unusual. I checked the screen again. My location had jumped again. The unit said I was standing on a logged point I'd never placed. I didn't even try to sleep after that. Just sat cross-legged in the dark, staring at that sickly green glow until the horizon started to gray. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I was done. Forget the markers. Forget the job. I was getting out. I packed fast and started north toward the fire road. It should have taken 3 hours. By noon, I was still walking. The GPS claimed I had covered 6 miles, but the terrain never changed. Same laurel, same black rocks ribbing up through the dirt, same bent birch trees leaning like broken arms. It was like walking a loop that someone kept winding tighter and tighter. When I stopped for water, I saw something that nearly made me puke. The stitched name tag on my pack, the one with my name on it, was gone. In its place, a strip of red tape was looped tight around the strap. My initials in black marker, ink so dark it looked wet. I yanked it off and threw it so hard my arm popped. Then I ran. No pacing, no breaks, Just flat out ran until my lungs felt like they were tearing in half. The trees blurred into smears of gray and green. I ran until I heard something, a sound that cracked through the panic like a gunshot. Water. A river, faint but real. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. If I could find that creek, I could follow it to the fire road. I shoved through brush, branches snapping against my arms, until I hit a narrow stream cutting through mossy stone. I dropped to my knees and cupped water into my mouth. That's when I saw them, strips of red tape drifting in the current. Some knotted to branches, some tangled on rocks. All mine. Tags still attached, waterlogged, but readable. I followed them upstream, tripping over slick stone, until the creek bent east and the trees opened up. And there it was, my tent. Not just another tent that looked like mine. My tent. Same faded green. Same tear in the rain fly from when I snagged it on barbed wire last spring. The flap hung open like a mouth. Inside, my sleeping bag was laid out neat, and on top of it sat my field notebook, open to the last page. The first line was written in my handwriting. I was 29 when it happened. I never wrote that. I didn't check the rest. Didn't grab the bag. I just ran. I couldn't tell you the route I took or how long I was moving. Just the pounding of my boots, the snap of branches, my lungs on fire. I ran until the trees started to thin and gravel crunched under my soles. The fire road. When I saw the truck, I didn't slow down. I ripped the door open, dove inside, locked it before I even turned the key. Then I drove. I drove until the road widened and the world looked real again. My shift at the ranger station wrapped up at 6, but I wasn't ready to head home yet. I'd been sitting there all day staring at logbooks and maps, waiting for something to happen, and nothing did. Just me, a pot of coffee that tasted like burnt dirt. That's the thing about this job. Sometimes you pray for quiet, and then when you get it, you can't stand it. It crawls under your skin, makes you start talking to yourself. So instead of going back to my cabin to sit in more silence, I figured I'd burn it off. Go for a hike. I left my truck in the lot behind the station, slung my canteen over my shoulder, and started up Wolf Hollow Trail. Most people avoid that trail because it doesn't really go anywhere. No summit, no big scenic lookout for selfies, just a winding path through a valley, dead-ending where two ridges press together like teeth. That's exactly why I like it. No chatter, no people, just me and the trees. The first mile was easy. The dirt was damp under my boots, that cool smell of old leaves in the air. Every so often, a twig snapped somewhere off in the brush. Birds chattered overhead. Just the normal forest soundtrack. Then, somewhere past the gully, it all stopped. I don't mean it got quieter. I mean it stopped. No wind, no birds. Not even the soft tick of leaves brushing together. Like the woods had been wrapped in a thick blanket. At first, I thought maybe I just tuned it out. Happens sometimes. But the longer I listened, the more wrong it felt. Like that silence had weight to it. I slowed down, listened harder. That's when I noticed the prints behind me. Boot prints. I know what my boots look like. I've been wearing the same pair for 3 years. These looked just like mine. Same tread, same size. But there were too many. Layers of them overlapping like I'd been pacing the same 20 feet for an hour. I turned a full circle. The trail ahead was smooth and clean, untouched. Behind me, torn to hell, like a herd of Highlanders had passed through. I crouched and ran a finger along one of the prints. The edges were soft, the dirt still loose. Fresh! Which didn't make sense because I'd been on the trail maybe 15 minutes. That's when my chest tightened in that way that says something's off. I stood up and kept moving, faster this time, keeping my eyes on the ground ahead instead of that mess behind me. 5 minutes later, I saw it. A flannel shirt hanging from a branch 8 feet off the ground, sun-faded, stiff with grime. sleeve stretched out like it was trying to give me a hug. I stopped so hard the gravel popped under my boots. The branch was way too high to reach without climbing, and the trunk was smooth. No scrapes, no nail holes, no rope burns. Just a shirt hanging there, like the trees were playing dress up. I told myself it was just some idiot's leftover camp gear. People leave junk everywhere. Still, the skin on my neck prickled. I reached for my phone to snap a picture for the log, but the screen was gray, no bars. Not unusual for Wolf Hollow, but my gut didn't like it. I kept walking, faster this time. Then the trail started changing. The packed dirt turned slick, black, almost oily. My footprints didn't stick. They vanished into puddles that filled as soon as I stepped, like the ground was bleeding water. The branches overhead sagged low, heavy with something I couldn't see. Their bark looked wet, like someone had just painted varnish over it. And in all that silence, my breathing sounded like a drum beat. Then I saw the cabin, but it shouldn't have been there. I know these trails. I've walked every mile of them a dozen times. There is no cabin on Wolf Hollow. But there it was, squatting at the base of the ridge like the forest had been hiding it. Roof sagging like wet cardboard, door leaning open just enough to look like a crooked grin. The walls were mismatched. Some boards silver with age, others fresh like someone had just nailed them up. Every nerve in me screamed and turned back. But I stepped inside. The air hit me first, stale, heavy, like the place had been sealed shut for years. One room, dirt floor, 4 walls, and a single table against the far wall. On that table were boots, 8 pairs, lined up like soldiers. Every single one still had feet inside. Not bones, not stuffed with paper, real feet. Some gray and shriveled, others pink and waxy, like they'd been peeled and dipped in something. That's when the smell hit. Wet rot. Thick and sweet. The kind of smell that clings in your throat. I stumbled back and slammed into the doorframe hard enough to shake dust loose. Something in the corner cracked, a long groan like wood under weight. I didn't wait to see what it was. I ran. I tore through the trees, branches clawing at my arms, roots grabbing my boots. I hit the ground more than once, scrambled up, kept going. Every time I thought I'd lost my footing for good, I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. Slow. Steady. I didn't look back. When the ridge broke open to sky, I nearly sobbed. I clawed my way up, burst onto the gravel road near the station, and hit the door shoulder first, almost tore it off the hinges. Inside, everything looked normal. Lights humming, my desk in place. But the shelves? Empty. Every map, every logbook gone. Except for one thing, single boot. Sitting dead center on my chair. I looked down. I was still wearing both of mine. I ran again. Out the back door, across the lot, straight into my truck. Didn't stop until pavement replaced gravel, and the trees were nothing but blur in the mirror. When I got home, I locked the door and sat in a chair all night, staring at my boots by the door. I'd been hiking the Appalachian Trail for 2 days when the markers just stopped showing up. At first I figured it was no big deal. The sun was still high, the air felt fine, and the ground under my boots looked like every other mile I'd done. Hard-packed dirt, patches of leaves, and those roots that seem to exist purely to grab your foot when you're tired. I didn't panic, not then. I just thought maybe I'd drifted off the main path a little. It happens. Maybe the paint on the blazes had worn away, or a storm had knocked a few trees down. Stuff like that happens out here all the time, right? I mean, it wasn't the first time I got on a stretch without seeing a marker. Usually you keep going for 10-15 minutes and one pops up again. No big deal, except this time it didn't. By late afternoon, I still hadn't seen a single white mark on a tree. No carved wooden signs, no trail maps at intersections, nothing. And the sun, that was already starting to slide behind the ridge, leaking orange into the sky like someone cracked an egg yolk over the horizon. My water bottle was almost dry. Every swallow burned a little. And I hadn't passed another hiker all day. That was when I stopped pretending everything was fine and told myself the smartest thing I could do was stop moving. Pick a spot. Camp. Backtrack in the morning when I wasn't running on fumes. I found a flat patch of ground near some rocks, not far from what looked like a dried-out creek bed. My legs were trembling, and my shoulders felt like someone had been taking swings at them with a bat from the pack straps digging in all day. Dropping my gear was pure relief. I pitched the tent as fast as my stiff hands would let me, boiled the last of my water, and ripped open a bag of jerky for dinner, and that's when I saw it. My pack was unzipped. Now, that might not sound like a big deal if you've never camped alone in the woods, but trust me, out here, you don't leave that stuff open. Ever. One careless move and a raccoon will tear through your food like it's Christmas morning. But there it was, wide open like I'd dumped everything in a hurry. I just stood there staring at it for a few seconds, trying to remember if I'd done it myself. I told myself I must have been tired, maybe distracted, but something about it felt wrong. I crouched down to check. Everything was still inside, but the second I looked, my stomach dropped. It was too neat. My food bags, perfectly stacked in a column. My socks, which I always jam into the bottom, were folded on top, and my toothbrush was lying across the bags, lined up so straight it looked like someone had measured it. That's when I realized what wasn't there. My knife. It wasn't just any knife. It was the one I kept in the same spot every single time. The side pocket with the zipper. I dug through the whole pack, hands clawing through nylon and clothes and gear until there was nothing left to check. No knife. I just sat back on my heels, heart pounding in my ears so hard I could barely hear the woods anymore. I told myself I must have moved it earlier, maybe set it down while setting up camp. Maybe it fell somewhere nearby. Sure, that was possible, had to be, but the neatness of that pack, that wasn't me. Night fell fast. One second I was squinting against the last bit of sunlight, and the next, it was gone, swallowed in black, so complete it felt like the trees had closed in on me. I crawled inside the tent, zipped it like my life depended on it, and shut off my headlamp to save the battery. And then I listened. The woods were wrong. No wind, no rustling leaves, no distant calls, just this heavy silence pressing down on the thin nylon walls until I could almost feel it on my skin. I'd camped in quiet places before, but this wasn't just quiet. This was dead. Then came the sound, a crunch. Faint, far off, but sharp enough to rip that silence apart. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I froze, ears straining until they burned. Another crunch, closer now. Slow, careful, like someone was dragging their feet just enough to make the leaves talk. I gripped my flashlight, but my hand was shaking so bad I had to grab it with both. I didn't turn it on, didn't unzip the tent. I just lay there, holding my breath while those steps circled the clearing. They didn't rush. They didn't trip over roots like a deer would. They moved like they had a purpose. They faded, then came back from another angle. At one point, they stopped so close, I swear I could hear the dirt shifting under their weight and the tiny snap of a twig. I pressed my tongue against my teeth to keep from breathing too loud. At some point, I must have passed out. Adrenaline only lasts so long, because when I opened my eyes again, the world outside was pale gray. Dawn, thin and weak. My body felt like a block of stone from staying frozen all night. I unzipped the tent. My pack was sitting right outside. I hadn't left it there. It was zipped now, perfect, and lying across the top was my knife, balanced like an offering. The blade gleamed polished clean, cleaner than I'd ever left it. I didn't eat breakfast. I didn't break down camp. I shoved what I could into the pack and left the tent behind. I walked. Fast at first, then faster, until it was almost a jog. The trail, if you could call it that, looked nothing like the one I'd been on before. No blazes, no cairns, just endless trees pressing closer. roots crawling across the ground like veins. By midday, my legs were screaming, but I didn't stop. I just kept whispering under my breath like some prayer, promising I'd find a road, a creek, a sound of life. That's when I saw it, cabin, leaning between two hemlocks. Half the roof caved in and the logs eaten away with rot. The windows were black holes. And then I saw the smoke. A thin, steady ribbon curling up from the chimney into the gray sky. I stopped cold. Every part of me said, turn around. Whoever was in there had been there a long time, and if they needed a fire, they weren't planning to leave anytime soon. I didn't call out, didn't move closer. I turned and ran. Not a hiker's jog, a full-out, reckless sprint. My lungs were on fire. My pack slammed into my spine, and I didn't look back, not once. When I finally collapsed against a tree, chest heaving, the smoke was gone from sight, but I could still feel it, like a thread pulling at my hand. I don't know how many hours I wandered after that. The sky bled into dusk again, and everything blurred. I stumbled downhill through thickets that clawed at my clothes until the trees broke, and there it was, a strip of gray cutting through the valley. I just remember the feel of asphalt under my palms as I crawled onto it and stayed there, shaking, until headlights curved around the bend. I'd been filling in for a friend who decided to take off on a last-minute trip, so I'd been working this remote trailhead on the Appalachian range for about a week. Honestly, it was the easiest gig I'd had in a while. My whole job was to log hikers, make sure they signed out, and close the gate before I left. That was it. It was one of those shifts where nothing happens. No lost hikers, no weird calls, just me, an empty parking lot, and the occasional squirrel throwing acorns at the roof like it had a personal vendetta. I was sitting in that cramped little office, sipping what was left of a coffee that had turned cold sometime around lunch. The last group of hikers signed out right on time. So I marked them clear, shut the gate, and did one last check over the list. Everything looked good. Well, almost. That morning I'd strapped a game camera to a tree on the Lower Ridge Trail. Just something to break up the monotony and maybe catch a deer or two on camera. I'd considered leaving it overnight, but it was brand new, my money, not the station's. If someone wandered off the trail and spotted it, that would be an expensive mistake. So I figured, no big deal. I'd just grab it on the way out. I tossed on my day pack, locked up the station, and headed for the trail. The sun was already sliding down behind the mountains. You know that weird half-light you get at the end of the day, where nothing looks like it did an hour ago. Everything was gray and flat. But I didn't think much about it. The trail was familiar. I'd walked it twice earlier that day. Easy in, easy out. About 10 minutes in, though, something felt off. The woods weren't quiet. There were still birds, and I heard a branch snap somewhere. But the trail didn't look right. It seemed narrower, like the trees had crowded in. Branches hung low enough that I had to duck under a few, which I definitely hadn't done earlier. I told myself it was just the light messing with my eyes. Things always look different at dusk. That's what I kept repeating in my head. It's just the light. When I finally got to the fork, I stopped dead. The tree where I tied the camera was bare. No straps, no camera, nothing. At first, I thought maybe I'd messed up and picked the wrong tree. But I'd tied that thing myself. Double looped the straps so tight I almost cursed out loud getting it fastened. It couldn't have just fallen off. I started checking the ground, figuring maybe the strap slipped. Crawled through brush on both sides, even looked under a couple of rocks like some raccoon might have dragged it off. Nothing. Then I saw it. About 15 feet from the fork, lying right in the dirt. A single black strap. The clip was snapped clean in half. The end was frayed like it had been ripped, not cut. I picked it up and my stomach gave this little drop, like missing the last step on a staircase. It didn't make sense. That strap should have been secure enough to survive a tornado. I turned to head back toward the station, and that's when I froze. The trail behind me didn't look the same. It sloped uphill now, just slightly, but I knew for a fact it had been flat on the way in, and it curved left. I would have sworn it had been straight before. I stood there way too long, trying to logic my way out of it. Maybe I was tired, maybe I just didn't notice. But the thing is, there were no side trails before the fork. I would have bet money on that. I pulled out my GPS. The screen flickered like an old TV and froze on the loading symbol. Tried shutting it off and turning it back on, same thing. That's when I noticed how dark it had gotten. Not a slow sunset, not the kind of creeping shadow you can watch move, just suddenly heavy, like someone threw a blanket over the whole forest. I shoved the strap in my pocket and started walking. Quick at first, then faster. Pretty soon I was practically jogging. Every bend looked the same. Trees pressed too close. Ground sloping just enough to mess with my balance. I told myself not to panic, just keep moving forward. Count steps if you have to. So I did. 100, 200. And then I saw it, the strap, lying right in the middle of the trail again. Same frayed end. Same smear of mud across the middle. I knew it was the same one because I'd thrown it into the brush when I found it. That was the moment my stomach flipped. I didn't think. I just ran. I don't know how long I ran. It felt endless. Just this pounding blur of trees and breath and the taste of metal in my mouth. My lungs burned, my legs were jelly, and then, finally, I broke into a clearing, if you can call it that. It wasn't big, 20 feet across maybe, but the ground was wrong, perfectly smooth, like someone had scraped it clean. No roots, no rocks, no leaves, and right in the center, standing upright without any straps, was my game camera, pointed straight at me. I just stood there, staring like an idiot. Every part of me screamed to leave it and run, but some stubborn part, the part that still thought maybe this had a rational explanation, made me step closer. I reached out. Before my fingers touched it, the screen flickered on by itself. The last image filled the display. Me, walking into the clearing. Only the picture was wrong. My arms were bent at impossible angles, elbows backward like broken wings. My head was tilted so far back it looked detached, and my mouth, God, it wasn't a smile, wasn't a scream, just open. Way too wide. I dropped the camera, the screen stayed lit, that image burned in. Something moved in the trees. Not close, just a ripple, like the whole forest shifted a little. Then another ripple, closer this time. I didn't wait. I ran harder than I've ever run in my life. At some point, I lost the trail completely, crashing through underbrush, branches clawing at my arms, tearing my shirt. My only thought was, light, find light, find the station. When I finally saw the below through the trees, I nearly cried. I burst into the clearing by the ranger station, slammed the door behind me, and locked it. I sat there on the floor, gasping, staring at the strap in my pocket like proof I hadn't lost my mind. The next morning, I went back with 2 other rangers. We found the fork, but no clearing. But I've never gone back to that ridge. Spring break was coming up, and everyone I knew had their plans. Crowded beaches, loud bars, road trips with too many people smashed into tiny cars. So when my uncle called and said, if you need to clear your head, the cabin's open, I didn't even think twice. I just said yes. This place is deep in the Appalachian Mountains. Not like there's a gas station 5 minutes away deep. I mean the kind where your GPS gives up halfway through and the road starts to look like it was carved by deer. I'd been there once as a kid, but the memory was fuzzy, just this image of a porch, the smell of wood smoke, and a horizon full of hills that all looked the same. The drive felt endless. 2-lane highways that turned into cracked blacktop, then gravel that crunched under my tires for what had to be miles. Every turn made me wonder if I'd missed it. The trees on either side pressed in so tight, it felt like they'd swallow the car if I stopped. When I finally pulled up, The first thing that hit me was the cold. That sharp, dry bite you feel in your teeth. The cabin looked older than I remembered. Thick logs gone gray with age, a porch that sagged just enough to make you hesitate before stepping on it, and a tin roof speckled with rust like dried blood. Inside was simple. One big room that was everything at once. Kitchen, living space, a little dining table, and then a single bedroom off to the side. No TV, no Wi-Fi, barely any cell signal, which was the point, I guess. The first 2 days were perfect, honestly. I hiked a little, read by the wood stove, ate canned soup like some wannabe survivalist. It was quiet in a way that didn't feel real. No hum of appliances, no cars passing, just wind moving through the trees so far away it sounded like breathing. The nights, though, that was something else. I've never seen darkness like that. It wasn't just the absence of light. It felt thick, like it pressed against you. I'd step outside on the porch and it was like the world ended 3 feet away. No stars, no moon, just black swallowing black. By the third night, I was used to it. Comfortable, even. I had a lantern going by the stove and a book in my lap. The fire had burned low, but the stove ticked softly as the metal cooled. I remember thinking how quiet it was. So quiet I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. And then this sound just erupted, one violent slam against the back wall of the cabin. It was like someone swung a tree trunk. The whole place shook. My chair screeched across the floor when I jumped up, heart slamming like it was trying to break out. My first thought was a tree limb, but there'd been no wind, no storm, nothing. The night outside was still. I grabbed my flashlight from the counter and walked to the back door, every step too loud on the old wood. My uncle had this sliding bolt on the door, the kind that drops into a groove so deep you need both hands to pull it free. I slid it back, opened the door a few inches, and aimed the beam out. Nothing, just the slope of the yard disappearing into the trees. My light barely reached 20 feet before the woods ate it whole. I stood there, breathing hard, listening so hard my ears hurt. Nothing moved. And then I caught it. A smell, wet, metallic, sharp, like blood left too long on iron. It was faint, but it hit the back of my throat and made my stomach tighten. I shut the door, bolted it, and told myself I was spiraling. An hour later, it happened again, but not a slam this time. A scrape, slow, long, dragging along the back wall like something sharp teasing the wood. Every hair on my body stood up. I froze, knife head tense. The scraping stopped. Then silence, so deep I could hear the fire hiss as it died. And then footsteps, not boots, not shoes, bare feet. You know that sound. Soft pads, pressing, lifting, shifting weight, slow, careful. I backed up so hard I hit the table. My hand shot out, grabbed the hunting knife by the stove. My brain was screaming, run, grab the keys, get out. But the keys were by the front door. To get there, I'd have to cross the living room, past that wall where those footsteps were. Then everything went quiet again. The kind of quiet that feels intentional, like something waiting. I stood there for what felt like forever, gripping that knife so hard my hand cramped. When I finally exhaled, the sound came out shaky and way too loud. I thought it was over. Then I heard breathing, slow, heavy, right outside the window. I didn't look. I didn't want to see what was out there. Then the curtain swayed. I ran. No plan, no thinking, just pure instinct. I bolted for the bedroom, slammed the door, shoved the dresser against it so hard it gouged the floor. My uncle's phone was in there, but it was one of those old rotary things, and dead as the trees outside. No calling for help, so I crouched in the corner, knife shaking in my hand, heart hammering so loud I swore it would give me away. The sound started again, circling the cabin, sometimes close, sometimes farther, but never gone. Every so often, a soft tap against the glass. or the long, aching groan of old wood under weight. Time stretched. My legs went numb. My back screamed. My mouth was so dry I could barely swallow. Every shadow in the room felt like it had teeth. I stared at the crack under the door, half expecting fingers, long, pale fingers, to curl through. But nothing came. When the first light bled through the window, I realized I hadn't moved in almost 8 hours. My muscles locked when I tried to stand. The cabin was silent. I waited another hour before sliding the dresser away. The living room looked untouched. Both doors were still bolted from the inside.